Hi, my name is Marcus Savage. I'm going to be your instructor for the week. This course is titled Heavy Equipment Safety. And this segment we're going to cover today is called Crane Safety, how to set up a crane for safe operation. Now, the first thing you want to do when you're setting up a crane, you want to make sure that you have the correct PPE. And so I have some PPE items here to display to show you, to give you an example of the correct PPE. First and foremost, you want to have a high-vis vest. This is going to protect you so that if a piece of equipment or operator can see you from the cab ready pretty easily. And so you just unzip it. This one actually doesn't have the sleeves. Some companies require you to have sleeves, but each company's policy, they'll let you know what they require. So you put your high-vis vest on, zip it up, you're ready to go. Next, you want to put on your hard hat. Very important. Make sure the hard hat has a nice good core in here and it's not had any cracks or anything on the shell or casing. Next, you want to get a pair of safety glasses. Now these glasses have the ANSA stamp on the rim here, so that way when you use them, they're safe and they comply with OSHA. And the next thing you want to have is a set of good sturdy work boots with no heel. The reason why we don't like a heel is because when you're going up and down a ladder, the back of the heel may get caught in the rungs of the ladder and cause you to slip or fall. So you want to have a good set of boots with a nice sole on it, no heel. The next, you want to have a pair of gloves. I would recommend a pair of leather palm gloves if you're going to be working with a crane because of the oil and grease involved. And so there it is, that's your PPE. And so you want to make sure that you have all your PPE before you go out on a site to operate or to help set up a piece of equipment. The next thing you want to do is you want to have the clear swing radius. Make sure the swing radius is clear, because when you get ready to operate a crane, you don't want any overhead obstructions like power lines or anything that could be in the radius of the cranes, of the boom of the crane. That's very important. You also want to make sure that you have no other obstructions. It could be some type of other cables or anything that can hinder the view, block the view, or hinder the swing radius of the crane. And so next, you want to make sure that you're setting the crane up on a level ground, solid ground. That's very important, because you don't want the crane tipping over in the case when it gets a heavy load on it. You want to look around and make sure that the surface is nice and solid, that there's no big dips or spots in the ground where it's really soft. You also want to make sure that you set the crane up in a nice area that involves less traffic, as least traffic as possible, because you don't want to operate the crane where there's going to be a lot of vehicles in and out of the area, and it can distract the driver or the operator of the crane. So you want to pick an area that has the least amount of traffic, that you can stage your materials in, that you can load and unload materials, because sometimes you may have a couple of trucks in there, and you may have to have a lot of room to hook the material up and load the trucks or whatever you're trying to do with the crane. So you want to make sure you have plenty of room around here. The next thing you want to do after you have a good area to operate your crane is, you want to make sure that your outriggers are fully extended. That's very important, because you want to make sure that the crane can operate at maximum capacity. And with the outriggers fully extended, that's going to ensure that. And you want to also make sure that you use crane pads. Every crane is going to come with a set of crane pads that you put the outriggers on. Most of the time, the outriggers will not touch the ground. They will touch the crane pads, and the crane pads will touch the ground. So after you get your crane pads set, and you set your rig up, and you level everything up, you test your swing radius, you want to set some barriers, because the counterweight of the crane is very dangerous, and you don't want someone wandering into your swing radius unknowing that the crane can be swinging that way. So you want to set some yellow tape, some yellow caution tape up so that the area is safe for operation. And only people designated to work on the crane or the operator or the oiler can be in that designated area of the swing radius of the crane. Next, you want to make sure that after you set your swing radius, you have your good swing radius, you're ready to do a visual inspection of the crane. So the first thing you want to do is you want to walk around the crane. You want to look for any loose parts or any missing parts or nuts or bolts that may have come loose in transition or transportation to the job site. Because, you know, as we all know, if it's driving down the freeway, it's going to hit a lot of bumps and things like that. So you want to make sure that there's no missing parts or, you know, nothing's loose. You want to also make sure that the windshield isn't cracked. Sometimes the glass can get cracked for whatever reason during transportation, and you just want to make sure that it's in good condition. You also want to make sure that you do an inspection of the tires. You want to kick the tires and make sure the tire pressure is good. You want to make sure that you look up under the crane for any leaks, any obvious signs of leaks. You want to make sure that you check all your hoses, your belts for any bulges, any cracks. You want to make sure all your belts have the correct tension. You want to make sure all your pulleys and things like that aren't cracked or missing bolts or loose or anything like that. You want to check all your fluid levels to make sure that the levels are adequate, or, you know, at least up to operating speed. You don't want to operate the vehicle with low levels of, say for instance, water. You want to make sure the water level is fine. You want to make sure that the hydraulics level of the hydraulic oil is adequate. You want to make sure that all those hoses don't have any cracks or any leaks. You want to pop the hood. Again, you want to inspect all those belts, any signs of defect, any signs of excessive wear. You want to make sure you report that to your mechanic that can repair the machine, and make sure that it's operating in safe working order. You also want to make sure that if you have any type of issues with any inspection, that you let the mechanic of your company know so that it can be tested. I mean, it can be inspected, it can be repaired, and it can be certified to be used safe. So you want to make sure that you always operate a piece of equipment that's safe and that's certified. And if you have any doubt or any questions, always consult your owner's manual. Always consult your mechanic, so that way any issues can be clarified or any problems can be corrected or fixed promptly. Next we have okay, so let's do a recap. We did a visual inspection. We have all our PPE. We walked around the crane, make sure the tire pressure is good. We want to make sure that we check our oil. We want to make sure that we check our oil pressure light indicator. We want to make sure that we check the brake pressure for your brakes. You want to make sure you check the low pressure warning light on your brakes, because that's very important. You want to be able to stop when you're using the crane. And once you get to inspection of the cab area, you want to make sure that the cab and all the compartments are debris free, meaning that you don't want to go in there and find any rodents, because sometimes if an operator before you left trash or anything like that, the machine can maybe have been sitting up for a little while. It can have rodents. So you want to check all your compartments and make sure they're clean and free of trash and debris, so that you won't run into any rodents when you come back the next day to operate the machine. You also want to make sure that when you get inside the cab, and you want to check all the levers and make sure that they're working properly and not sticking or not too loose. You want to make sure that all your gauges are working properly, your instrument panel, all the glass instruments are nice and clean. You want to make sure that everything is working properly in there. You want to make sure that if the cab has air conditioning, the air conditioning works correctly. You also want to make sure that the mechanics of the crane are working correctly. When you do start the engine, you want to make sure that you check the boom. You want to extend that boom out. You want to check it for cracks. You want to check it for leaks. You want to check it for any signs of defects, any signs of wear, excess wear. You want to check the ram in the boom. You want to check the piston for leaks. Sometimes that boom or any part of the crane can have a leak, and it can be an internal leak. So you have to make sure you get all the way in there and check all those leaks, because sometimes it can leak and you won't even know it until you get in there because it's leaking into a compartment. And so if you do see any leaks, make sure you render the crane unusable, put it out of service, notify your mechanic immediately. And before you use any piece of heavy machinery, make sure that you read the owner's manual and you understand how to use the machine, because some machines have controls that a year before or a year or two after may not have. So you want to understand how to operate the machine properly and effectively. And one more thing before we go, we want to make sure that when we get ready to operate a machine, that we understand the mechanics of the machine. And so that's why it's very important that you practice before you pick loads up. You want to make sure that your load indicator charts are working, your boom angle charts are working. You want to check all of your cables to make sure that they're not frayed, broken, or damaged. You want to make sure that the drum, the cable that's winding up on the drum, winds up correctly, and that it doesn't get crossed up and smash the other cables, causing them to possibly fail. You want to make sure that you check the block on the crane. You want to make sure that you check all your boom parts. You want to make sure that all your pulleys and things like that are working and that they're oiled, right? You want to make sure that they're lubricated. So there's a lot of work in inspecting a crane. And so in doing so, let's make sure that we take our time and that we use precaution when we're inspecting a crane.